You know the feeling, and it is one of the most frustrating, isolating sensations a human being can experience. You do everything right. You drink the water, you eat the fiber, you take the supplements that everyone swears by, but you still feel heavy, bloated, and completely blocked. It feels like your body has somehow forgotten how to do the one basic function it's supposed to perform every single day. And when you go to the doctor, you're often told to just eat more kale or take a laxative that might work for a day, but leaves you feeling even worse the next. The truth is, if the standard advice hasn't worked for you, it's not because you aren't trying hard enough. It's because the standard medical model of treating constipation as a simple plumbing problem is completely outdated. If you are tired of the guessing game and want to understand what is actually happening inside your body, from your brain to your gut bacteria, and I want to invite you to join our community by hitting that subscribe button right now. And we are building a space here for real research-backed health solutions that go deeper than the surface symptoms. And I'd love for you to be a part of it. Before we dive in, I need to give you a genuine authenticity disclaimer because your trust matters more to me than anything else. Everything I am sharing with you today is based on the absolute latest medical literature from 2024 and 2025, derived from top-tier institutions like the American College of Gastroenterology and the European Society of Neurogastroenterology. And I am not selling you a magic pill. I am translating complex medical data into tools you can use. And you will find a full list of these trusted sources in the prescription below so you can verify everything for yourself. Let's start by completely reframing how we think about your gut, because for the longest time, we treated the colon like a drain pipe. If it was clogged, we just assumed we needed to flush it out with more water or force it open with chemicals. But the newest research tells us that chronic constipation is rarely just a mechanical blockage. It is actually a neurological and ecological disorder, meaning the issue isn't usually the pipe itself, but the electrical signals telling the pipe to move and the microscopic ecosystem living inside it. And when these signals fail, the gut simply goes to sleep, and no amount of fiber will wake it up because the problem is a power failure, not a debris problem. This brings us to the first and perhaps most critical root cause that is almost always overlooked, which is the health of your vagus nerve. This nerve is the longest cranial nerve in your body, running all the way from your brainstem down through your neck and into your abdomen, acting as the primary telephone line between your brain and your gut. Under normal circumstances, your brain uses this nerve to send a chemical messenger called acetylcholine to the smooth muscles of your intestines, telling them to contract and move stool forward in a rhythmic wave called peristalsis. However, we now know from recent studies that chronic stress, trauma, or even viral infections can damage the tone of this nerve, essentially fraying the telephone wire so the signal becomes weak or static. When you are in a state of low-level fight or flight anxiety, your body diverts energy away from digestion to your muscles, and the vagus nerve effectively stops delivering that move signal to the colon. You end up with a condition where the lights are on, but nobody is home, and the food sits there fermenting because the neurological command to process it never arrived. And this is why so many people find that, and stress management is actually more effective for their bowels than laxatives. But what happens when the food sits there too long? This leads us to the second major breakthrough in 2025 research, which is the distinction between simple bacterial overgrowth and something called intestinal methanogen overgrowth, or IMO. You might have heard of SIBO, but IMO is different because it involves a primitive single-celled organism called archaea that doesn't just produce gas, it produces methane. This methane gas is not inert. It acts as a neuromuscular paralytic, meaning it actively bathes the nerve endings in your intestinal wall and paralyzes them. It creates a vicious cycle where the constipation allows these archaea to grow, and then the methane they produce slows down the gut even further, making the constipation worse. If you have stools that float, or if you struggle with severe bloating that feels like you have a balloon inside you, it is highly likely that you aren't just constipated. You are hosting a colony of organisms that are chemically sabotaging your motility. Now, sometimes the issue isn't that the stool isn't arriving at the exit, but that the door is locked from the inside. A condition known as pelvic floor dyssynergia. Imagine you are trying to push a door open, but every time you push, you accidentally pull the handle tighter. This is exactly what happens in dyssynergia. Normal defecation requires a beautiful, coordinated dance where your abdominal muscles push down while your puborectalis muscle, a sling-like muscle that wraps around your rectum, completely relaxes to straighten out the anal canal. In almost half of the patients I see with chronic constipation, this coordination has been lost, often due to years of holding it in, pain, or subconscious stress. And instead of relaxing that muscle when they strain, they paradoxically contract it, clamping the rectum shut even tighter. You could have the softest stool in the world, but if that muscle is tight, nothing is getting through, and taking more laxatives in this situation is dangerous because you are essentially creating a traffic jam against a closed gate, which causes severe cramping and inflammation.
Mm.
We also have to talk about your metabolic engine, specifically your thyroid, because your digestive system does not have its own battery pack. It relies on the metabolic rate set by your thyroid hormones. If you have subclinical hypothyroidism, meaning your numbers are just barely within the normal range, but not optimal, your gut motility will be one of the first things to slow down. Thyroid hormone is required for the smooth muscle cells in the gut to regenerate and contract, and without enough of it, the bowel becomes sluggish and weak, leading to a slow transit constipation that feels like your gut is simply hibernating. So, how do we fix this without relying on damaging stimulant laxatives that can make your bowel lazy over time? And we need to look at natural prokinetics, compounds that actually repair and stimulate the electrical wave of the gut. The most powerful natural combination supported by recent clinical trials is a specific extract of ginger and artichoke leaf. This isn't about drinking ginger tea. We are talking about high concentration extracts that stimulate the migrating motor complex, which is the cleansing wave that sweeps through your intestines when you are eating. The ginger stimulates the stomach to empty, while the artichoke acts on the small intestine to trigger bile flow and forward movement. When taken on an empty stomach, usually right before bed, this combination mimics the body's natural housekeeping signals, gently nudging the system back into rhythm without the violent urgency of a chemical laxative. For those of you who need to add bulk and hydration to the stool, we have moved past the days of gritty, bloating psyllium husk and are now looking at the green kiwifruit. This is fascinating because green kiwifruit contains a unique enzyme called actinidin, which helps break down proteins in your upper gut. But it also contains a fiber structure that holds onto water remarkably well in the colon. Clinical trials published in the American Journal of Gastroenterology have shown that eating 2 green kiwifruits a day can increase spontaneous bowel movements just as well as prunes or psyllium. But with significantly less gas and pain, it works by mechanically swelling in the colon, which gently stretches the intestinal wall. And this stretch is the natural biological trigger for your nerves to wake up and initiate a bowel movement. It's a food as medicine approach that respects the delicate physiology of an irritated gut. We also need to address the microbiome, but not by just throwing random probiotics at it, which can actually make things worse if you have that methane overgrowth we talked about earlier. Instead, we look at fermented foods like sauerkraut, but used medicinally. Sauerkraut contains acetylcholine-like compounds and huge numbers of lactobacillus bacteria that lower the pH of the colon. A 2024 review highlighted that you don't need to eat a whole bowl, just a tablespoon or two of high-quality refrigerated sauerkraut daily can provide trillions of colony-forming units. These bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which is the primary fuel source for the cells lining your colon. And when your colon cells are well-fed and energized, they are much better at coordinating the muscle contractions needed to move waste along. Now, if you are in a situation where you are completely backed up and need immediate relief while you work on these long-term fixes, there is a functional medicine protocol known as the vitamin C flush. This utilizes the principle of bowel tolerance, where you take high doses of buffered vitamin C and magnesium. Because your body can only absorb so much vitamin C at once, the excess stays in your gut and attracts water like a magnet. This flood of water softens the impaction and creates a safe osmotic pressure to flush the system out. However, you must be careful. If you have a history of kidney stones or kidney disease, this is not for you. And as high doses of vitamin C can increase oxalate levels, it is a powerful tool for an acute reset. But it must be used with respect and ideally under the guidance of your healthcare provider to find your specific tolerance. And for those looking for a non-drug solution that uses advanced technology, 2024 saw the FDA clearance of the Vibrating Capsule. This sounds like science fiction, but it is a real prescription-based device. You swallow a small capsule that is programmed to stay dormant until it reaches your large intestine, where it begins to gently vibrate. These vibrations stimulate the mechanoreceptors in the gut wall, mimicking the body's natural biological clock or circadian rhythm of digestion. It essentially retrains your colon to wake up at the right time of day, usually in the morning, without any chemical side effects. It's a brilliant example of how we are moving away from chemical irritation toward mechanical restoration of the body's natural rhythms. Finally, if your issue is that pelvic floor dyssynergia, the locked door we discussed, the most effective treatment is not a pill at all, but biofeedback therapy. This involves working with a specialist who uses sensors to show you exactly what your muscles are doing on a screen in real time. It allows you to visibly see when you are tightening instead of relaxing, and through a process of visual learning, and you can retrain your brain to release that tension. It is remarkably effective because it fixes the software problem in your nervous system. You're literally rewriting the neural code for defecation that may have been scrambled by years of pain or bad habits. It empowers you to take back control over a function that feels like it has controlled you for so long. Recovering from chronic constipation is a journey of relearning to listen to your body. It's about calming the vagus nerve, balancing the methanogens, fueling the motion with ginger and kiwi, and retraining the muscles to relax. You are not broken. Your system is just out of sync. And with these targeted research-backed tools, you can restore that rhythm. Thank you so much for watching and trusting me with your health. And if you found this helpful, please share it with someone who is struggling in silence. You might just change their life. Check the description for the full list of medical studies and resources, and I will see you in the next video.